It is the autumn of 1918, and the air around a decaying English moat house is heavy with more than just the dampness of the season. This is the setting for Arthur J. Rees's mystery, The Hand in the Dark. The house itself feels like a character, a place where the weight of a violent family lineage seems to seep through the very stones. We find ourselves at a house party hosted by the formidable Miss Alethea Heredith. The guests are a collection of intellectuals and worldly figures, the sensitive and intellectual Sir Philip Heredith, his wife Violet, and a gem expert named Vincent Mussard. The evening begins with a sense of unsettling foreshadowing. During dinner, Mussard tells a harrowing story about a ruby-embedded skeleton found in New Zealand. It is a tale of lethal greed, a reminder that beautiful things often carry a history of blood. This conversation hangs in the air, casting a shadow over the elegant surroundings. Then, the peace of the evening is shattered. A single gunshot rings out from Violet Heredith's bedroom. When the guests rush to her room, they find a scene of impossible violence. Violet has been shot in the chest. As the shock settles, the impossibility of the crime begins to take shape. The bedroom window is situated 20 feet above a moat, and there are no footprints in the gravel below. The telephone lines have been mysteriously disconnected. It is a locked room mystery in the truest sense, a crime that seems to have occurred in a vacuum, leaving the guests trapped in a house with a killer who shouldn't exist. The official investigation is led by Superintendent Merrington, a man who relies heavily on tradition and social assumptions. Merrington is a dogmatic official, and he quickly turns his gaze toward the household staff. He focuses on the housekeeper, Mrs. Rath, and her daughter, Hazel. Through his investigation, he uncovers a secret. Mrs. Rath is actually Mary Thieberton, a woman linked to a notorious unsolved murder from 15 years ago. The evidence against the girl, Hazel, seems overwhelming to the police. A missing brooch is found, and a revolver is discovered in her possession. Merrington builds a theory of a crime of passion, suggesting that Hazel killed Violet out of a secret, obsessive love for Philip Heredith. To the superintendent, the case is nearly closed. He sees the social hierarchy and the circumstantial evidence, and he settles on the most convenient explanation. However, a new piece of evidence complicates everything. Someone has stolen a pink pearl necklace from a locked jewel case in the victim's room. This detail is crucial because it contradicts the police theory. If the motive was a crime of passion, why the theft? If the motive was robbery, why leave other valuables? The presence of the stolen pearl suggests a much more calculated, much more deceptive motive than a sudden burst of jealousy. Desperate to clear Hazel and find the truth, Philip Heredith turns to the private investigator Colwyn. Philip is a man clearly haunted by the events of the night, insisting on the girl's innocence even as the police tighten their grip. Colwyn, however, does not look at social standing or old scandals. He looks at the mechanics of the crime. Colwyn begins to pick apart the official investigation, finding flaws that Merrington's blunt methods missed. He discovers that the murder weapon wasn't a gun from the house, but a small revolver belonging to a guest, Captain Nepcote, who had already departed for London. This realization shifts the timeline of the crime entirely. The breakthrough comes when Colwyn finds a small, seemingly insignificant piece of yellow tinder, wick, in the gun room. This is the key to the entire deception. Colwyn realizes that the killer didn't need to be in the room when the shot was fired. Instead, they used a slow-burning fuse to trigger the antique pistol. This created a delayed gunshot, a mechanical alibi. While the guests were downstairs dining together, the fuse was burning down, eventually striking the primer and firing the gun. The shot that everyone heard was merely a timed event, allowing the killer to be in plain sight when the murder supposedly took place. Colwyn's forensic examination of the scene reveals the final, devastating detail. The killer had accounted for the physics of the shot. They knew the recoil of the delayed shot would knock the antique pistol into the fireplace grate, hiding the weapon in plain sight among the coals. The killer hadn't just committed a murder, they had staged a play, using time and physics to create an illusion of impossibility. As Colwyn lays out the mechanics of the trick, the truth finally emerges, and it is far more tragic than a simple robbery or a crime of passion. The killer was Philip Heredith. Driven by a descent into madness and a desperate, misguided need to protect the family's social reputation, Philip had killed his wife. Violet's past held a secret, a scandal that Philip believed would destroy the Heredith name forever. In his mind, the destruction of his wife was a necessary sacrifice to preserve the honor of his lineage. He meticulously planned the delayed shot, the theft of the necklace, and the framing of Hazel Rath to create a web of confusion that would lead the police away from himself and toward the most vulnerable people in the house. In the end, the confrontation is harrowing. The man who sought to protect his family's dignity was the very person who brought its ruin. Philip collapses under the weight of his own deception and dies, leaving the Heredith legacy in pieces. When we look back at The Hand in the Dark, there is a lot to unpack about why this story lingers. One of the most striking elements is the illusion of the alibi. It's a brilliant use of mechanical ingenuity to manipulate the perception of time. We often think of an alibi as a person being in a certain place, but Rees shows us that an alibi can be a machine. By decoupling the act of killing from the sound of the shot, the killer effectively stepped outside of time itself. There is also the heavy theme of class and reputation. The entire tragedy is fueled by the tension between the moral necessity of truth and the crushing social pressure to maintain family honor. Philip Heredith is a man who becomes a slave to a concept, reputation, that is ultimately hollow. He destroys the very thing he claims to be protecting because he cannot reconcile the reality of his wife's life with the idealized image of his family name. The setting of the moat house acts as more than just a backdrop. It functions as a symbol of the weight of history. The house is decaying, much like the moral foundations of the people living within it. It is a place where ancestral violence and modern secrets collide, suggesting that the past is never truly buried. It just waits for the right moment to resurface, often with a violent suddenness. Finally, the story plays with the contrast between appearance and reality. There is the civilized surface of the house party, the dinner, the conversation about gems, the social graces, and then there is the primitive violence of the murder. The killer uses a very sophisticated mechanical method to commit a very primal act of destruction. It's a reminder that beneath the veneer of Edwardian social order, the impulses of greed, passion, and self-preservation remain unchanged. In the end, Colwyn's victory is a victory for logic over social assumption. While the official police force was blinded by the obviousness of the evidence and the social standing of the suspects, the private investigator was able to see the truth by looking at the small, discarded fragments of reality, like a piece of tinder wick. It's a classic reminder that the truth doesn't care about reputation or social standing. It only cares about the facts of how a thing actually happened.